It's wonderful that you could do a week-long retreat, a physical retreat together, not just online. I'm sorry I can't be with you physically, but I am in spirit and online. It's wonderful to join in this retreat at the Domicilium. Thanks to Bernhard and to Mikhail and Andrea and everyone who helped to bring this together. I plan to give a Dharma talk each morning for you. It's afternoon here in Japan, but each morning. And then today, Tuesday, and Thursday, and Saturday also have a chance for online encounter, kind of online one-on-one after the Dharma talk. Let me begin by speaking of what in Zen is called great faith or great trust, a kind of a, not a blind belief, but rather a trust, a confidence that grows out of our actual experience. It may not be perfect, it may not be complete, that's okay, but we have some experience. And based on that, our trust, our confidence naturally grows, and we are able to give ourselves more and more to the practice. This is quite a natural process. To put it lightly, we might say great trust is the universe coming to smile at itself, coming to see what is there and to smile, the universe smiling through you. But as most of you know, there is also what is called great doubt, kind of the mirror image, so to speak, of that great trust. This great doubt is simply a matter of what holds you back from giving yourself completely. The trust, the faith, the confidence allows you to give yourself. But is there also something that is holding you back? If so, this is what we can call a kind of a great doubt. Not a bad doubt, but actually a great doubt. In Zen practice, this great trust and this great doubt hold each other up and strengthen each other. We can honestly say that we have confidence, trust, faith based on our experience. Yes, it's limited, but we have some experience. We continue on. But is there something still holding us back? If there is, this is what we need to use as a kind of inspiration in the practice. Taken wrongly, this doubt breaks us. Oh, I don't know. Something still holds me back. I'm a failure. I'll never be able to get awakened. This is what happens when it goes wrong. When it goes right, it becomes like fuel or energy for the practice. I don't fully know. There is something holding me back. What is that? What is that? A genuine curiosity, a need to know. This can propel us, give us energy in the practice. Consider well, you don't need someone else's great trust, nor do you need someone else's great doubt. Simply open up to what is in the ground of your own experience, under your own feet, in the depths of your own heart. That's the only place for you to really find this. Let me try to make the practice more concrete. This is the beginning of a 7-day, week-long session or retreat. So let us make sure that we begin on the right foot, in the right way, as we say. Most of you are familiar with the story of the 6th patriarch of Chinese Zen. The sutra connected with him, called the Platform Sutra, the ordination platform where one becomes ordained. The Platform Sutra of the 6th patriarch. It is so respected, it is held in such high esteem that it is not called a Zen record like the record of Lin Chi, Rinzai, or the record of so many other Zen masters. It's actually called a sutra. In a way, it is the beginning of a real Chinese Zen, which is what became Korean Zen, which is what became Japanese Zen. Very simply, the heart of the story is the 5th patriarch was getting old and needed a successor, someone to take over, to become the next, the 6th patriarch. So he said, if anyone feels they are worthy, have them write a poem, which is a common way of expressing your realization in Chinese. To write a poem expressing your realization. And if it is accepted, you will become my successor, the 6th patriarch. Well, there were many, many monks there, but no one was willing to do such a thing. So the head monk, the senior most monk, greatly respected, well educated, and very, very settled in his sitting. He also had some doubt, but everyone else assumed, no, the head monk is the natural choice. But he still had some doubt. So anonymously, secretly, he went and wrote his poem on the wall at night. And as most of you know, it talks about the body and the mind being a mirror and a stand, and that we must constantly practice to polish this mirror so that no dirt, no dust collects on the mirror. Of course, the mirror is a metaphor for the mind. So we must constantly, continuously practice and polish, keep this mind mirror clean, not let any dirt or dust collect. Well, the other monks were very impressed with this, and they said, oh, this must be the head monk. It's wonderful. He will become the sixth patriarch. And they made obeisance to the poem and everything. But the fifth patriarch could see, it's good, but it's not good enough. This young man now, the man who will become the sixth patriarch, it's a legend, but it's a good one. It says that he could not even read or write. He was illiterate. He was uneducated. He came from the South, where they were considered baboons or monkeys. There's actually a dialogue when he first meets the fifth patriarch where he says, oh, the people from the South are like primitive monkeys. They don't have Buddha nature. An interesting story. You can read it later if you like. But here, this uneducated, illiterate man, he wasn't even a monk yet. He was actually working in the kitchen. He was basically a laborer. But he heard people reciting this poem by the head monk. Polish the mirror constantly, polish the mirror constantly. And he thought, not quite right. So he couldn't write. So he asked someone to write for him next to that poem, his own poem, in which many of you know, as he says, the body is not the mirror on a stand, the mind is not a mirror. Originally, the main thing is the third line. In Japanese, Hondai muichimotsu, literally, from the first, originally, there is not one thing. Where can the dust collect? Well, this was something that the fifth patriarch could see. Aha, this guy really has it. However, this young man, illiterate, couldn't read or write, wasn't even a monk. So in private, late at night, the fifth patriarch called this young man and said, you've got it. I want you to be the sixth patriarch. Here is the robe and the bowl of the previous patriarchs. I am giving it to you as a symbol of this. Anyway, this story goes on and we will continue it in the other Dharma talks. But right now, beginning this retreat, you need to make clear for yourself through your own practice, what is it to polish that mirror? And what is it to say, really, there's not one thing. Where can the dust collect? These sound like two very different things. It sounds like the expression about not a single thing is criticizing, condemning the practice of gradual, dualistic polishing the mirror. This is the common interpretation. It will not do. It will not do. You need to polish your own mirror moment to moment to continue that fundamental practice of seeing, is there a hindrance? Is there something in your mind that is holding you back? What is there that needs to be cleaned? And to continue, for example, to bring the mind back here, not to let it wander, to bring the mind back again and again, and continue to polish that mirror. Without that, you won't be able to begin the practice. The point is that when you really do polish and polish and polish until there is no dust or dirt at all, perfectly clear and clean. Then let the mirror be gone as well. Even the mirror must be gone. Then you can see for yourself that this is none other than originally there is not one thing. They are not two different teachings at all. You might say originally not a thing is a deeper, more Zenistic expression. But without the first one, without the head monk speaking of polishing over and over constantly, there would be no need for the guy who became the sixth patriarch to speak of. Really, there's not one thing. You must come through that to see that from the first, yes, from the very beginning, which of course includes right here, right now, there is not one thing. Right there. Polish that mirror until there can be no doubt. Do you see what it is to polish that mirror? What the practice is? Feeling pain in your legs, feeling tiredness in your mind, what it is to continue to polish that mirror until the dust and the mirror are gone. Correct practice, including correct zazen, is essential. Of course, also living a wholesome life, not just practicing here on the cushion for a while and then throwing yourself into your passions and your delusions when you finish. We have to be able to live a life in accord, at one with this practice. I have spoken before, and maybe some of you have seen some of the online videos, but to briefly summarize the basics as we enter this retreat. I often speak of the practice being constant, constant without a break. A retreat, a session like this, is an excellent time to confirm this in your bones. Yes, of course, when you're sitting, the practice is there, but it must become constant so that when you get up from the sitting itself gets up and does what needs to be done. So that when you come back and sit down again, you don't begin the practice again. You simply continue the practice once again in the seated posture. True zazen is not something that begins or ends. It must become what you are. Then it can naturally disappear. But first, it must become constant. Please make good use of this precious opportunity for the next week with a group of like-minded people to make the practice constant. Yes, take a break, take a rest. Yes, have a meal. But see that you can't really leave the practice. Once you have really given yourself to it, you cannot leave the practice. This is an important moment. I urge you to confirm it for yourself. Again, the practice must become constant, not just something we do, but what we are. The practice also must come naturally to be complete, one whole, not formally perfect. It doesn't have to be formally perfect, but it does have to become complete in the sense that it includes everything. Nothing is left out. Nothing is excluded. This is very much connected, of course, with it being constant. It also comes to include everything. However confused you may get, you don't leave the practice. It comes to include everything. So please confirm for yourself how the practice, if you are doing it correctly, it naturally becomes constant and complete. A third point I have been making is that it is also more concretely a matter of concentration, that is focus, attention. The concentration of Zen practice is not ordinary concentration, turning our attention from one thing to another thing. Rather, it's more a matter of the sun rising and everything is illuminated. Of course, we can turn our attention to what is needed, but everything comes to be illuminated. It's not the self turning its focus from one thing to another. You see that, don't you? In the depth of the samadhi, the concentrated oneness. It's not just turning the flashlight, the light of willed attention from one thing to another. No, it must come to be, in that sense, constant and complete. Then you can see for yourself, this concentration is something we are polishing, perfecting, deepening, continuing. Yes. But when it comes to its completion, when it comes to its culmination, you realize that that concentration is always already here. It's reality. It's not a state that you are developing or creating or holding or enlarging. It's always already here. You must realize this. Otherwise, it's just a matter of this self-willed concentration back and back. That's the hard part of practice. That's what's tiring. That's what's frustrating. Basically, not practicing properly. Confirm for yourself. The real concentration is not something that we simply create or polish. As important and valuable as that practice is, the point is to realize that it's what is always already here. You can't step out of it. Again, I urge you to confirm this for yourself. This is what the online one-on-ones are about, to make this clear beyond a shadow of a doubt. Again, as review, the practice must become constant, complete, and the concentration itself must not be simply a willful effort. It must come to include everything. I trust it's clear that during the retreat, it's best not to write, not to read. You might see an interesting book as you wander around the Domicilium. This is not the time to read. You can read after the retreat. Please, if you have a cell phone or something, turn it off. No need to text message for the next week unless there's an emergency. Drop all of that because it takes your mind away from this. Genuine Zen practice is not a hobby. A week-long retreat makes it clear. This is something that we give all of ourself to. A week-long retreat. You do not leave the same person who came. You don't become someone else, but after a week, you will see, you will see. If you're practicing properly, you cannot help but be transformed in this marvelous process. I would like to leave some time for questions if something is not clear or a question from out of the practice, but please first feel free to stand up and stretch for a moment. Thank you for listening so intently.
Hi, Jeff.
Michael, good to see you.
Nice to see you too. Jeff, you spoke about the concentration, that the concentration is not a focus or spotlight to a certain point, from one point to another point. In opposite, the concentration is something which is around me or should be around me, which could come from the bottom and from all over. So, but if I, for instance, recognize or notice that my mind begins to wander, my reaction is to focus on my breath. So I'm again in focusing. So my question is how I could switch from this spotlight on breath to the surrounded concentration.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the point is with which you started, the big trust. Maybe the trust can help me to overwhelming the focus, but perhaps you have some advices how to manage this switch between the focus and the big concentration outside.
Mm-hmm. Yes. As you say, feel free to stay there if you'd like.
Okay.
I still haven't figured out how to reach through the screen to hit you though, but I'm working on it, Thank you for your question. I'm sure other people also have the same concern. In the beginning, it's necessary to take our self-willed attention and bring it back again and again. Without that, we cannot begin, right? We wouldn't even sit down to practice in the first place. So we do need some discipline and some turning of the attention, turning off the television or the computer and sitting down on our cushion. This is a conscious decision, putting our concentration here. The point though is if you are doing it correctly, and yes, great trust through our experience, we start to see that it's not just a matter of turning the attention from one thing to another thing, but rather it's as if we are engulfed in it. It's not something we are bringing to it. We are engulfed, you understand? Like in the ocean. We are in that concentration. It is sustaining us. I'm not sustaining it. In deep Zazen, it's fairly common to experience this. This self-willed effort comes to an end and something else, for lack of a better word, takes over. It's a kind of a seamless, without a gap, a seamless concentration then. It comes to be total and complete. We can still concentrate on what is needed, but the ground, the source of that concentration is not self-willed effort, you see? It's something much more fundamental. And when you contact that, the practice really is transformed, because the whole tedious, difficult process of bringing the mind back again and again and again and again is gone. There is no place for the mind to come back to. You see? The concentration is not something that we are creating. In the beginning, of course, it appears that way. It seems that way. And the breath is the best way, as you see, right? Why the breath? Michael, do you see? The breath is not a thought or an idea. We can think about the breath, but that's not the breath. The actual embodied breath, it's always already here, isn't it? Whether you think about it or not, you're breathing. So it's a very good focus, you see, because it's not going into the self-willed thoughts and ideas. Rather, it's returning us to this immediate physical experience, you see? And just as the breath does not really come and go, our awareness of it may come and go, but the breath is constant, isn't it? If not, you're dead. It's always already here. So to focus on it in that way is not to focus on a thought or an idea, you see, a concept. It's something much more immediate and embodied. Thus, the breath is a very helpful way to allow this concentration, yes, with great trust based on experience, to allow it to be what it is. Does that help?
Muss ich den was betragen? The polishing the mirror, it sounds to me like maybe noticing my thoughts, but letting them go. So I understand that. But arousing the great doubt, it sounds like the opposite, picking up something and making something with it. So, how can I differentiate between like arising thoughts or feelings that are not helpful to like put energy into, and the great doubt.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe I was not clear when I spoke briefly about the great doubt, but you can see how this, again, if, of course, a metaphor of polishing the mirror, of seeing when a thought comes, huh? Polishing it, polishing it. Really, what do we do with those thoughts? Finally, we don't have to do anything with them. To do anything with them, in a sense, is to bring more dust and dirt. So what do we do? When the practice is mature, it's clear. We don't do anything. Of course, we don't follow them and make a story out of them. But if we try to brush them away, that's also a kind of a thought, isn't it? So to do anything with the thoughts is to virtually entertain another thought, good, bad, better, worse. It's endless. It's endless that way. So that's why you see the value of the six patriarchs, rather radical expression. Huh? Originally, there's not one thing, but through the process of doing this, seeing a thought come, maybe getting entangled in it, but eventually allowing the thoughts to just come and just go. You don't have to do anything with them. What then is this great doubt? Does something remain still? You have to look clearly into that mirror. When you're completely free of the thoughts, you don't get entangled at all. The mirror has been polished, we can say. But look, does something remain? That's all. That's all that the great doubt is. It's not another a thought or some rather pompous sounding thing. I know it can sound that way, but it's great in the sense that it leads to great awakening. And it's also great in the sense that it comes to be total. So all it means is do that practice faithfully as you have been doing. We've been practicing together for some time now. Yes, continue. But it's essential to finally see what remains. You understand? What remains? That's all. Okay?
My question is, if we can do this at home, to be always into the practice, yes? Not, how you said, not to concentrate on to sit, but always be concentrated. How important is it to sit every day for a longer time?
Well, that's a good question for the end of the retreat, huh? For the next week, you don't need to ask that question, do you?
Yes. I ask if I'm back at home. The question is yes.
It's a bit early, but first of all, give yourself for the next week. You have this precious opportunity with a group of mature practitioners, to sit morning, noon, and night, and even more importantly, to continue that practice when you're taking a break, when you're eating a meal, when you're taking a walk. Then maybe the sixth day of the retreat, you might want to ask, if it still exists, that question. As we go back to the world, Barbara, that is a good question. But for now, you have the luxury of not worrying about it, okay?